If you were here last week, you heard Tim Alford tell a beautiful story about how our children and the elders in our congregation became pen pals during the pandemic. Tim's son, Gray, exchanged letters with Bob Vole. We had 8-year-olds exchanging letters with 80-year-olds, and they grew together in these deep connections that we share with one another here at this church, across generations, across family, and even beyond time. See, at Christ Church Cathedral, you love to excel at connection and care. It's two of our most deeply held values here. And during those early days of the pandemic, some of our children made visits, like the Blanchetts and the Wright children. They visited with our elders, like Dr. P. and Flo. They were unable to go into their assisted living community, but the children and the adults, they met at the door. And although they were separated by glass, they were deeply connected by love. These visits and these letters meant the world to everyone. They were sowing seeds of love and care, and they planted faith. Were they small acts? Maybe. Were they powerful acts? Absolutely. They reminded us that God's love flows from the bonds that we create and the love that we share. Now, we all love to excel. We all love to excel in different parts of our lives. Maybe it's cooking or baking or the work we do, or maybe it's a hobby or a sport. But there's something that just gives us great feeling of accomplishment when we go beyond what we thought we could do, because we all love giving our best. And that same spirit of striving for excellence is what Paul is speaking to us today. This is what we heard in the first reading today. He's encouraging his members in the church in Corinth and telling them that they are excelling in so many ways. But he wants them to also excel in their generosity. He wants them to give their best. He says, you are so faithful, you are smart, you are wise, and you are deeply loving, and you are enthusiastic. But now he says, I want you to bring that same kind of striving for excellence to excel in your generosity. He encourages them to grow in the grace of giving. Now, what Paul's talking about isn't easy. He's inviting them and us to really ask ourselves, can we take a step up? Can we stretch ourselves beyond what seems possible? Why? Well, because, as we heard last week, Paul tells us that generosity is like planting seeds. If we sow sparingly, the harvest is small. But when we sow generously, God can do so much with that abundant harvest. And it's far more than we could ever ask or imagine. And you see, here we are not just planting seeds for ourselves or for today, but we are creating a harvest for generations to come, for children, for grandchildren, for people we have not yet even met. This truth, this excelling in giving of ourselves became so apparent during the pandemic. Our community cupboard learned how to deliver bags of hygiene supplies to neighbors beyond our walls, neighbors in deep need. And our own cathedral community stepped up with this beautiful benevolence fund that helped some of our families in a time that was very, very precarious. And our children, they excelled. They excelled in connecting with our elders and creating those meaningful bonds across the generations. Many, many years ago, my mother inherited a small financial gift from her aunt. And she was so grateful and so excited that she shared this gift with her 3 brothers and her 2 daughters. And she made a very small ask of us. She said, "I hope you will invest this and let it multiply. And then someday, use it for something good. It's all up to you." She had so much joy in sharing that gift with us that her giving was so infectious. And years ago, when we were getting ready to do the renovation of the Helm building, our spiritual home for all the generations, I felt like I wanted to really excel in my giving. I wanted to contribute very generously to our annual campaign because that's what allows us to do ministry day by day and week by week. But at the same time, I wanted to give generously to that beautiful renovation so that we could grow all the generations up spiritually. So, like many of you, I saved, I budgeted, I prayed, and I thought, and I was ready to make my gifts, both of them. But I wanted to do more, and I didn't know how. And so I went back and prayed again. God, help me to figure out another way. And then I remembered that gift that my mother gave me. And so that gift that passed from my great aunt to my mother and to me and to this building and to our community was just another gift that was added to all of our many, many generous offerings that planted seeds of faith for years to come. And so now every time I walk into that building, I feel the presence of my mother and of my great aunt, and it's just extraordinary how across time and space that we are connected one to another, all the generations here at Christ Church Cathedral. Paul's words remind us that God's grace is meant to flow through us to others, that the goal of giving is to connect us. It's to connect us, to form community, a community that shares love, that does generous outreach in the community, and that cares for one another. It's the way of Jesus, and we call it the way of love. And so it's that time of year when we are all asked. We're all asked to support this cathedral where we find so much meaning and love, to follow Jesus in the way of love and to spread it far and wide. So, as we reflect on Paul's call to excel in the grace of giving, I invite you to consider what God is calling you to do as I consider what God is calling me to do. And together, let us excel in the grace of giving. Let us excel this year by planting seeds of faith and generosity for our children, our children's children, and generations to come. Amen.